Good morning, I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah has the morning off. Right now on Morning News Now, rapid spread. The Omicron COVID variant now in all 50 states, with the CDC saying the strain makes up 90% of all new cases. Doctors now pleading with the public to get vaccinated as people gather this holiday season.
You will have to trust me when you or your relative comes to my intensive care unit and needs to be put on life support. Trust this vaccine.
Also, the new COVID pill authorized by the FDA that could be a game changer for those who test positive. Search for answers. State Department workers battling the mysterious illness known as Havana syndrome say they feel ignored by their own government. One employee detailing her battle exclusively to NBC News.
I could actually feel my brain shutting down, like everything kind of went black.
The latest developments in the investigation into who and what is behind this mysterious illness as those workers try to live with the side effects. Also this morning, Beanie Mania, a new documentary, is taking us inside the obsession with Beanie Babies in the 90s. I'm going to speak with one of the film's creators about what drove so many people to try to get their hands on the toys and the serious lessons about global finances that Beanie Mania can teach us all today. And a new home for the holidays. One Afghan family that fled Kabul getting ready to celebrate their first Christmas in the U.S. How they're adjusting to life thousands of miles from the only place they've known and the help they're getting from their new neighbors. Good to have you with us on this Christmas Eve. We're going to get started this morning with the latest in the fight against the coronavirus. The Omicron variant has now been detected in all 50 states, just 3 weeks after the first case of the new strain was discovered in the U.S. Several states are now reporting more COVID cases than at any other time during the pandemic. Hospitalizations are also on the rise as states from New Hampshire to Ohio deal with a record number of patients inside their hospitals. Now, it appears help could be on the way to stem the tide of serious illness. The FDA authorized Pfizer's COVID antiviral pill yesterday, making it the first at-home treatment to protect Americans from severe cases of COVID. NBC News medical reporter Erica Edwards joins us now. Erica, good morning to you. Let's start off with that FDA authorization for Pfizer's COVID antiviral pill. What impact will this have on the COVID battle, and how long do you think it'll take until the pill can actually be distributed around the country?
Sure. Hey, Joe, good morning. So right now, that pill, Paxlovid as it's called, from Pfizer is in relatively short supply. It's really complicated to manufacture this pill. It takes 6 to 8 months on average. By January, we do expect to see about 265,000 courses of treatment, and as many as 10 million courses of treatment by the end of summer. But Joe, that's 8 to 9 months from now. Right now we are averaging nearly 150,000 new cases of COVID-19 every single day.
Yeah, right now we can't rely on that for quite a few months, it sounds like. Erica, with Omicron now in all 50 states, we know hospitalizations are also rising across the country. Where are we seeing the biggest increases right now as we head into the Christmas weekend?
Right. Hospitalizations have been rising in areas with lower vaccination rates, generally in the Midwest, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, but also in places with higher vaccine uptake in the Northeast, for example, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, New Hampshire. Now, overall hospitalizations have risen 39% since November 1st. Now, there is a little bit of promising news. Just yesterday, there were 3 studies that came out from the UK and South Africa suggesting that hospitalization rates related to the Omicron variant are significantly lower when compared to Delta. We'll still have to wait to see how it plays out here in the U.S., Joe.
I want to ask you about something on a lot of minds today, and that's travel. A new report from Bloomberg, quoting a top medical advisor to the world's airlines, says we should assume flyers are now 2 or 3 times more likely to catch the virus during a flight since the emergence of the Omicron variant. Now, keep in mind, flying has been seen as sort of a safe way to travel for some time now. What does this mean for Americans who are preparing to fly out today or over the next few days for the holidays?
Yeah, that headline sounds a little dire. That advisor was basically saying that because Omicron spread so much more easily than Delta, it just makes sense that your risk is higher, really, no matter where you are. But in general, just as you said, Joe, air travel is considered safe. There's pretty good airflow. Generally, people are masked, not interacting unless you have a particularly chatty seatmate. But that said, in general, experts say the old advice still stands. Keep up with your hand washing, avoid high touch areas. And generally, you might want to stagger the times that you and your seatmate have your masks off for eating and drinking. That should keep you as safe as possible while you're traveling this weekend.
That's good advice there. Those precautions, incredibly important, not just on the plane, but also when you're walking through the airport as well. Erica Edwards, thanks so much. Now, that heightened risk of getting on a plane is one of the reasons many travelers are actually taking to the roads this holiday season. More than 100 million Americans are expected to travel to visit family this week, and many are opting for a safer and more flexible way to get to their loved ones. AAA predicts an increase in car travel. The number of people flying or taking a train is expected to drop. But whether you choose plane, train, or automobile, travel will likely cost you more this year. NBC News reporter Gary Grumbach joins us now from Newark, Delaware, with more on this. Gary, thanks for joining us. So why are cars looking like the preferred travel method this year? And what are some of the concerns you're hearing as more travelers hit the road?
Hey there, Joe. Good morning. Yeah, especially with Omicron sweeping the nation, we're seeing and we're hearing from doctors, if you're in a crowded public place, there's a really good chance somebody there has coronavirus, and they may not even know it yet. And of course, during this holiday season, there are a lot of those crowded public places, and cars are just safer in that respect, especially as you're traveling long distances. Here's what the AAA spokesman I spoke to this week had to say.
Because with a car, you have a lot more flexibility. You can decide when you want to leave, where you want to stop, who's in the car with you. So people may feel a little more comfortable this year just by, hopping in the car and going away.
Now, before you get in a car, experts say to check some really basic things. First, if it's the first time you've been on a long road trip, make sure your Easy Pass is all up to date. The last thing everyone wants is a violation ticket a few weeks after a fun family gathering. The other thing that will save you money and also just keep your car safe is by making sure you have enough air in your tires. Gas prices right now are down, but if you have air in your tire, not enough air in your tires, it is going to cost you more to go on these road trips. Joe?
The downside of road travel might take a bit longer, but hey, more bonding time with your family. Now, we mentioned those rising costs. Why is travel so much more expensive this season? And for those still looking to rent a car or try and book a last-minute ticket, how much should they expect to spend?
Yeah, unfortunately, no matter how you do this, it's going to cost you. Car rentals are up more than 20% this year. The good news is, at least these car rental companies have cars to give you. You'll remember during the middle of the pandemic, a lot of these companies sold half their fleets just to keep their own businesses afloat. It seems that's really sort of normaled out, and car companies are back to a normal inventory level, but that is about a 20% higher cost than usual. Hotels are up 36%. But a tip for you, Joe, all year you collect these points, these reward points at hotels from your work travels. Use them this time of year. That's what they're here for. Now, remember, they won't cover all of your expenses because taxes and fees don't count with these points, but that's certainly a good tip to start for you there.
All right. I know my bank of points is a little lower this year. Didn't travel as much, but some folks did. Now, Gary, many thought this holiday season would be a return to normal. Sadly, that's not the case. If you're traveling, how do you keep yourself safe and how do you keep your loved ones safe from the Omicron variant?
Yeah, Joe, I got to tell you, yesterday I was covering a bunch of different COVID testing centers, and the lines, there was just so much frustration that we're still going through this. But experts say, AAA, doctors, they all say, remember the basics. Remember what we've learned throughout the past 2.5 years of this pandemic. Here's what AAA spokesperson had to say.
Where you are, maybe the pandemic's not raging quite as fiercely right now, but where you're going, it could be. Have extra masks with you. Limit your exposure. Try and avoid crowded indoor situations. All those type of things.
Bottom line, Joe, people are excited to get out. 110 million people this week are going to be doing just that. They just want to be doing it safely. Joe?
That's the priority. All right, Gary, thank you so much. Now, for many Americans who want to get tested for COVID before hitting the road, It has been tough. They've had to deal with long lines and wait times at testing sites. This week, the Biden administration outlined a plan to boost the nation's testing infrastructure. But will it be enough to help keep Americans safe ahead of the holidays? NBC News correspondent Jake Ward has more.
Good morning, Joe. The White House is stepping up efforts to create a nearly ubiquitous testing regimen here in the United States, announcing that they will create federal facilities at sites all across the country. They're beginning with New York City in order to backstop the state capabilities when it comes to the labs that they need to process testing. They're also talking about making at-home testing more or less free, buying up about 500 million tests individually and then making them available on a website to anyone who wants them. It really mimics something we've seen abroad, in which governments are essentially buying these at-home tests and then providing them free to their citizens. Why do we need all of this? Well, it's because, according to a Harvard roadmap to pandemic resilience, we're going to need to be testing about 20 million people a day in order to really remobilize the economy and keep everybody safe. At the moment, we're really only testing about 1.5 million people a day, and even at the peak of testing back in December of 2020 and into January of 2021, at that point we were only doing about 2.2 million a day. So we really need to get up to that number. We've been speaking to private companies. There's about 11 of them that make the individual at-home tests, and they say they are ramping up capabilities, that if anything, in many cases they saw the projections internally in their own data and knew they had to get out in front of this and begin to ramp up testing and their capabilities. But it is clear that those will not be adequate to actually bring us up to 1/6 of the population every day. That's about 20 million people, because if we're going to continue to see these variants popping up, even in vaccinated people, we're going to need tests before we go get together with our coworkers, get together with our families, or enjoy holidays like we're just about to. Joe?
Jake Ward, thanks so much. Now, that push to increase the country's testing capabilities comes as COVID cases surge around the U.S. Let's bring in Dr. Bob Lahita now to get his insights. He's a professor at the Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine and director of the Institute for Autoimmune and Rheumatic Diseases at St. Joseph Health. Dr. Bob, always good to have you with us. So where is the country at right now in terms of COVID testing? Do you think the government's doing enough to expand testing capabilities around the country?
I think the government is doing enough, Joe. They're sending 500 million cases of the rapid testing kits out. I don't know how the public is going to access them. That's one question that's big, maybe through pharmacies, maybe through mail order. Roughly 19 tests have been done per 1,000 people. That's the PCR test. Of course, we have no way of measuring who does the home testing, but lots of people are lining up in droves. Cars, sometimes 3 apart at our hospital, blocking traffic. It is a little bit of a chaotic situation, Joe.
Doctor, we did get some welcome news we talked about at the top of the show with Pfizer's COVID antiviral pill. What role will this treatment play in trying to keep patients out of the hospital?
Well, this is a game changer of sorts. The drug is called Paxlovid. It's really a protease inhibitor. This is the kind of thing, to make people understand what it is, has been used in HIV, and it has been used in hepatitis C treatment. It's basically a 5-day regimen, and it involves another drug called ritonavir, which everybody, all physicians and certainly many nurses know. It's extremely effective. If you have symptoms, you must take this pill for within 5 days of having your symptoms in order to prevent you from getting into the hospital. It's much like Tamiflu, but far more powerful. And so this pill is a game changer, because hopefully it'll keep people out of the hospital, out of the ICU, and prevent them from dying.
Dr. Lahita, I wanted to get your take on Israel's plan now to roll out a 4th dose of the COVID vaccine to citizens who are over the age of 60. Do you think this is something the U.S. should consider or will soon consider to help protect Americans who are at risk of severe COVID symptoms?
Well, Israel is trying to give the shot, the 4th shot, to people over the age of 60, 4 months after the 3rd shot. Now, people are weary of getting boosters. You know, in the United States, only 30% of the people who have had the 2nd shots get the 3rd booster shot. So I'm not sure how good this is going to be. And of course, we're listening to the Pfizer and Moderna people who are saying, because of the molecular nature of the vaccine, messenger RNA, they're able to tweak within 3 months to produce a new, very specific, Omicron-specific, for example, vaccine, which can be given to people. But I'm not sure that people are going to line up in the U.S. for a fourth shot. Israel is somewhat of a bit more hermetically sealed country right now. And I suppose it is possible that the Israelis will take a fourth shot over the age of 60. Certainly a good idea, particularly if you're immunosuppressed or have a problem with your immune system overall.
Dr. Bob, tomorrow and Saturday, a lot of families across the country are going to be getting together. For those who are a little anxious about those gatherings, what's the advice you have about how to do it safely?
Well, our family is making sure that everyone is tested before they come to the Christmas dinner. Everyone is vaccinated and has had their booster shots, and that's the first level that you have to consider. People should be vaccinated before they get together, and even if they are vaccinated, they should wear masks until it's time to drink or eat within certain parties and certainly within family gatherings. And again, it doesn't hurt to get a home test and test yourself prior to going to dinner, within 24 hours of going to your dinner or your party. That's what. And make sure there's ventilation and wear your mask of all things and wash your hands.
Speaking of your family, Dr. Bob, I had the privilege of meeting your wife, Carolyn, who is a fantastic sculptor. We did a story on her that aired on the Today Show and yesterday here on News Now. Incredible to meet her, and we're so grateful we had the chance to tell her story.
She is so proud, Joe, and we are so proud of her. She's an amazing person, and thank you for bringing her up. She'll love it.
Sounds good. Wishing you and your family a great holiday weekend. Dr. Bob, as always, thanks so much.
And to you also, Joe.
This morning, five suspects are in police custody in Delaware after a U.S. Congresswoman was carjacked in broad daylight. Representative Mary Gay Scanlon was robbed at gunpoint in her Philadelphia district yesterday after attending a meeting in that city's FDR Park. Police said the suspects were later found that evening in Scanlon's car about 30 miles from the scene of the crime. Scanlon was not injured in the attack. And in a seemingly unrelated incident, an Illinois state senator, Kimberly Lightford, was also carjacked while in a Chicago suburb with her husband on Tuesday. Police say multiple shots were fired, but the couple was unharmed. Authorities are still searching for the suspects in that case. The investigation into the Capitol insurrection is once again shining a spotlight on members of Congress. Now the January 6th committee is calling on Republican Congressman Jim Jordan to provide information. Jordan is a Trump ally. He's now the second member of Congress to be called forward after Pennsylvania Representative Scott Perry was asked to cooperate on Monday. NBC News senior congressional correspondent Garrett Haake joins us now. So, Garrett, why is the committee asking Jordan for information right now?
Well, Jordan is as close of an ally to Donald Trump as they come in Congress. And so the committee wants to know about really all of his communications with the then president between Election Day and Insurrection Day. But they really want to know about the conversations he was having with the president while the attack on the Capitol was on. Jordan has said several times that he spoke to the then president several times on that day, but he's yet to reveal the contents of that conversation. Even after the riot was over, he was still someone who was voting to throw out some of the election results. So those conversations in the context of those 5 or 6 hours, especially in the afternoon when the attack was at its peak, that's at the heart of the committee's inquiry here.
Garrett, what is Jordan saying about all this? Any signs he'll cooperate, or is that highly unlikely at this point?
It was interesting, Joe. He was asked about this on Fox News last night and didn't seem to slam the door. We can parse this response on the other side. Listen.
I mean, we just got the letter today, Brian. We're going to review the letter, but I got to be honest with you. I got real concerns about any committee that will take a document and alter it and present it to the American people, completely mislead the American people like they did last week. And it turns out it looks like it wasn't just one document they did this with. It was other text messages as well. So I got real concerns with that.
So Jordan's talking about a copy edit there made to shorten one of the text messages that was displayed during the debate around Mark Meadows' contempt charges. But the thing he's got working against him is Jordan has said several times in public that he's got nothing to hide should the committee ever come calling. And, Joe, now they're calling.
Yeah, they are. And Garrett Jordan is the second sitting member of Congress to be called for questioning by the committee. Help us understand how significant and perhaps unprecedented is this moment for American politics, and could we still see more members of Congress called forward?
Yeah, this just isn't done to have members called, or at least to have members forced. And I think that's where this could get weird, Joe. You know, it's one thing to ask a member to testify on a subject in which they might be an expert. In this case, you could argue that Jim Jordan is as an expert as they get in Congress on the insurrection. But if we get into the realm of subpoenas or punishment for not showing up, then we are deep down the rabbit hole. And this is the kind of thing where we don't know how this Congress will handle it, and we don't know how the next Congress will handle it. I think that's one of the concerns for the Democratic members of this committee in particular. Should control of Congress switch next year? Are we setting a precedent here where any member can be called or subpoenaed by the other party and forced to testify about you know what? Joe, I think the person who's watching this debate most closely might be Kevin McCarthy, the minority leader right now, someone who we know the committee wants to talk to. Trying to force him to testify before this committee would be a huge departure from the kind of norms of Congress, and it'll be fascinating to see how it all plays out.
We're going to see in the new year, probably. Garrett Hake, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Time to get a check on your morning news now weather. Michelle Grossman with us again this morning. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. And many of us are going to be digging out in the west, while some of us are going to be sweating in summer-like weather. So let's take a look at the big story, because that's the western storms. We're looking at big-time snow. We're looking at heavy rain. You can see that floating inland, and that's been happening day after day throughout this entire month, and it's going to happen at least through the next week. So as we look towards the Pacific Northwest down to Southern California, we are looking at wet weather. Higher elevation snow, we're looking at 8 feet in some spots through Sunday. So winter weather advisories, winter weather watches, winter weather warnings are in place from the Pacific Northwest through California to the Rockies, and we're going to be digging through the snow over the next couple of days. So this is the setup today. We're going to see that big rain and big snow, rain spreading down to Southern California. We could even see some flash flooding in Los Angeles, even San Diego, especially in those burn areas. And then we're going to be accumulating feet of snow in the Sierra Mountains. That will move further inland on tomorrow, where we're going to see it move into the Rockies. And then another Pacific storm hits the West Coast. So again, it's that December deluge where we're seeing storm after storm, and we're really seeing those rain totals and snow totals adding up. So the rainfall forecast through Saturday, you can see lots of dark colors on this map, up to 5 inches in some spots. That's half a foot of rain in some spots. Los Angeles, you're going to get a lot of rain too, and that includes Christmas Day, also Christmas Eve, Redding, Portland, San Francisco, even San Diego having some of that heavy rain. And then the snowfall forecast, generally 2 to 3 feet of snow, but some spots in the highest elevation, the Sierras, would be digging out of 8 to even up to 10 feet of snow. I know it is crazy. Now, on the flip side, some of us are going to be barbecuing on Christmas Day. We're looking at temperatures so above normal, even some temperatures feeling closer to July 4th as opposed to Christmas Day. So Oklahoma City, 80 degrees today, 80 degrees on Christmas, Dallas, 81, Houston, 81, and even in the upper 60s to near 70, 71 degrees on Christmas in Memphis. And that warmth starts today. You can see lots of dark colors on this map that's indicating that warm air in place, that high pressure dome of high pressure just spinning in this warm air. So 77 degrees today in Lubbock, that's 26 degrees above normal, 64 in Oklahoma City, and 73 in Dallas. By tomorrow, we're looking at temperatures close to 80 in many spots, even 80 in Lubbock, 79 in Austin. The record is 82 there. A lot of records are going to be broken over the next several days. We're talking about hundreds of millions above normal for this time of year. And then as we look towards Christmas Day, yeah, that heat stays in place for many. So, Joe, it's going to be 70 degrees in Louisville on Saturday. And certainly I think a lot of people are hoping on that Christmas list, wishing for some shorts.
Yeah, no kidding. Who would have thought? You know, a little something for everyone across the map this holiday. All right. Thanks so much, Michelle. Appreciate it. Coming up, Russian President Vladimir Putin holds his year-end press conference, and he's facing a lot of questions about the buildup of Russian troops along the Ukraine border. The message he's delivering amid heightened tensions with the United States. Plus, who and what is behind the mystery illness impacting more than 200 government employees? It's called Havana syndrome. One staffer is now telling NBC News the U.S. government is not doing enough to track down the cause. We got her story next. Welcome back. This morning, Russian President Vladimir Putin has been fielding questions on a variety of topics at his end-of-year press conference, including COVID-19 and the economy. But taking center stage, of course, at today's event, the growing tensions with Ukraine. NBC News senior international correspondent Keir Simmons has more on that. Keir, good morning.
Joe, good morning to you. President Putin appearing to hold out hope this morning that the tensions over Ukraine can be resolved. But it comes just days after he was making threatening signals, the Russian leader as ever, keeping the world guessing. This morning, President Putin taking questions, but avoiding health risks, sitting at a distance from journalists. Russia third in the world for COVID deaths. The risk of war in Ukraine looming over his end-of-year news conference today.
Everybody is saying, well, a war is in the offing, and everybody is warning us against interfering and threatening with sanctions, so we shall respond somehow. This is a formidable issue.
Even after this month's virtual face-to-face between Presidents Biden and Putin, Russia's military buildup is escalating, the State Department says. President Putin this week threatening a, quote, military technical response, perhaps code for a cyber attack. Ukraine not backing down either. This week, Ukrainian television showing combat drills with US-made Javelin anti-tank missiles. But despite all this, Russia's foreign minister says security talks with the US and NATO will begin in January. And today, President Putin saying Russia doesn't want war.
We don't want that. It is not our choice. And by and large, we are seeing positive traction at this point.
The Kremlin's proposal sent to Washington a security treaty, including uncompromising demands that NATO ends expansion and all military activity in Eastern Europe, quickly dismissed as unacceptable in Washington and Western capitals. And while this morning President Putin is signaling hope that tension with the West could be diffused, his intentions remain hard to read. Speaking to military officials this week, he said ominously, there's no room for retreat. At the same time, Joe, this morning, a little bit more of positive news. Russia and Ukraine agreeing to restore a 2020 ceasefire deal for eastern Ukraine. That prompted a top Ukrainian official to say the coming holidays, Joe, should be peaceful.
Keir Simmons, thanks so much. Now to an NBC News exclusive. A former State Department employee is speaking out for the first time about her symptoms linked to the so-called Havana syndrome. That's the mysterious condition that has impacted U.S. government employees in locations around the world. She says the government did not take her symptoms seriously. Now she's left struggling to find answers. Chief Foreign Affairs correspondent Andrea Mitchell has her story.
Cheryl Cruz speaking out for the first time about how her 20-year State Department career was cut short by a mysterious illness, the Havana syndrome.
I started with the vertigo and the tinnitus and brain fog. I could actually feel my brain shutting down, like it just, everything kind of went black.
She is among more than 200 State Department personnel and CIA officers afflicted around the world. Many still feel ignored.
I do not believe the department took me seriously. It was always, we'll get back to you. I have to ask myself, are they trying to disprove us, or are they trying to prove what happened?
And in Canada, 27 diplomats, military police, and family members are suing their government over incidents in Cuba. Who's responsible? Attention is focused on Russia, which U.S. intelligence says has the global reach and technology experts suspect could be the cause. In November, CIA Director Bill Burns warned Moscow there would be repercussions if it's behind it.
All of us at the State Department and across the U.S. government are intently focused on getting to the bottom of what and who is causing these incidents.
Tuesday night, Secretary of State Blinken visited doctors at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, where CIA officers and State Department personnel are being treated.
A lot of suspicion is placed on Russia. They've denied it.
We know that this is something that's been widespread, and we will keep at it until we find who's responsible, and we will hold whoever it is accountable.
A new law requires the government to compensate victims for qualifying brain injuries. Still to be determined what qualifies as a brain injury. And many of these victims are disabled, unable to work. Back to you.
Andrea, thanks so much. Let's take a look at what else is making news around the world this morning. NBC's Claudio Lavanga joins us from Rome. Claudio, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. Well, statue mourning those who were killed during protests in Beijing's Tiananmen Square in 1989 was taken down from a university in Hong Kong. Now, the statue was one of very few public memorials of the bloody crackdown in China. Its removal has been criticized by academics who called it an attempt by China to rewrite history. Now, let's move to the UK, where on Wednesday, for the very first time since the start of the pandemic, more than 100,000 people tested positive for COVID-19. Well, the Omicron variant, of course, is being blamed for the record number of infections, and yet the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, announced that no restrictions will be introduced before Christmas. Now let's move, for last but not least, to New Zealand, where a funny cat called Keith, who's got a bit of a reputation for stealing stuff from its neighbors, has returned home to its owners with a bong and a Ziploc bag full of unidentified white powder. Now, the local police, who seem to have a sense of humor that is as strong as the sense of duty, said that they will question Keith the cat to figure out which neighbor they took the drugs from. But one thing is for sure, Joe, that by stealing drugs, the cat, Keith the cat, has taken his habit to new highs.
Yes, I can see that. It also could be the plot for a new show called Cat DEA. I like it. All right, Claudio, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Coming up, James Franco is speaking out on the sexual misconduct allegations against him. The Oscar nominee's shocking admission about claims he slept with his students. Plus, sidelined, more star athletes are off the roster and in COVID protocols. The steps some leagues are now taking to try and save their seasons. Great news this morning for fans of the Tim Burton-directed Batman movies. Michael Keaton is reportedly going to return as the Dark Knight for the first time in 3 decades. He'll be in the upcoming Batgirl movie. Keaton first played Bruce Wayne back in the 1989 Burton film and then again in the 1992 sequel, Batman Returns. Variety magazine reports that Warner Brothers declined to comment on Keaton's casting. Batgirl will star Leslie Grace, who's playing the heroine Barbara Gordon, daughter of the Gotham City Police Commissioner. Batgirl doesn't have a release date yet, but it's expected to come out sometime in 2022 on HBO Max. Keaton will also return as Batman in next year's The Flash movie, which will somehow also feature Ben Affleck as the Caped Crusader, an abundance of Batmans. James Franco is back in the spotlight this morning, speaking for the first time on the sexual misconduct allegations against him. Giving his first interview since 2018, the actor blamed addiction for his public struggles over the years. Franco settled a lawsuit on those allegations earlier this year. NBC News Now correspondent Isa Gutierrez reports on what Franco is saying now.
Actor James Franco is breaking his silence about sexual misconduct accusations made against him. The allegations from students at an acting school he ran and taught at first came nearly 4 years ago.
At that moment, I just thought, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to pause. Did not seem like the right time to say anything. There were people that were upset with me, and I needed to listen.
Franco speaking out on SiriusXM's The Jess Cagle Show. In 2019, the Oscar nominee was sued in a class action lawsuit by 2 former students who attended the Studio 4 acting school, which Franco ran from 2014 to 2017. In the lawsuit, the former students alleged that they and others were coerced into filming overt sexual acts by Franco and his partners.
The stupidest thing I did, or one of the stupidest things I did at the school, was I called one of my classes a master class, sex scenes. It was not about sex scenes. I was not teaching people how to do sex scenes or intimate scenes or anything of that nature. It was a provocative title. I'll admit, I did sleep with students. I didn't sleep with anybody in that particular class, but over the course of my teaching, I did sleep with students, and that was wrong.
People listening to this will say, how could you not see that there would be a power imbalance among a teacher who's not just a teacher, but is James Franco, like a very, very famous, powerful actor and producer and a student? How did that power imbalance How are you not aware of that?
I suppose at the time, my thinking was, if it's consensual, okay. Of course I knew, I talked to other people, other teachers or whatever, like, yeah, it's probably not a cool thing. At the time, I was not clear-headed, as I've said. So I guess it just comes down to my criteria was like, if this is consensual, like, I think it's cool. We're all adults.
The allegations against Franco first surfaced in 2018, following the Me Too reckoning in Hollywood. At the time, Franco denied the allegations.
The things that I heard that were on Twitter are not accurate, but I completely support people coming out and being able to have a voice, because I didn't have a voice for so long. So I don't want to, shut them down in any way. It's I think a good thing, and I support it.
Then earlier this year, he agreed to pay more than $2 million to settle the suit, according to court documents seen by NBC News. A joint statement issued on behalf of the actor and his former students said, quote, "While defendants continue to deny the allegations in the complaint, they acknowledge that plaintiffs have raised important issues, and all parties strongly believe that now is a critical time to focus on addressing the mistreatment of women in Hollywood." Studio 4 closed in 2017. Now, Franco's saying he's been in treatment for sex addiction since 2016.
That was Isa Gutierrez reporting. This morning, the sports world is reeling from COVID outbreaks that are sidelining big stars, wreaking havoc on schedules, and raising serious questions about what could happen next. Joining us now is Priya Desai, senior correspondent for Sports Illustrated. Priya, good morning. Good to have you with us. Let's start with the NHL. The league now pausing its season until after Christmas, and also announcing that its players, many of the premier hockey stars in the world, will not travel to Beijing for the Winter Olympics. Tell us, how did the NHL come to these decisions?
So they paused its season about 2 days early. There was a planned holiday break. But remember, leading up to this, 11 teams had already suspended operations, and there were 50 games that had been postponed due to COVID. So at that point, the NHL commissioner thought adding on the February Olympics break just wasn't feasible. You have an 82-game season. So during that Olympic break is when they're going to make up all these 50 games. And on top of that, when they come back next Monday, they're going to have much stricter COVID protocols, and they're going to go back to daily testing.
Now, since NBC is going to be broadcasting the Winter Olympics here in the U.S., we do want to include a statement from NBC Sports saying, in part, we understand the decision, but the Olympics remain the greatest hockey tournament in the world, regardless of whether the players are from the NHL or their elite leagues around the world. All right, let's move on to the NBA. More than 100 players and coaches have entered what they call their coronavirus protocols. This month alone, several games have been rescheduled. You'll remember when the pandemic first hit, it was the NBA that had to shut down completely. I think many of us remember that night in March of 2020 very well. So as we head into the Christmas weekend, usually a big event in basketball, should we be expecting more postponements?
So we could see postponements as late as December 24th. There's several games to be played, and there's only one team that doesn't have at least one player on that COVID protocol. Now, Adam Silver has said that he does not plan to cancel the season. They're going to keep going. They are also going back to daily testing. And if any player tests positive, he goes straight into isolation for 10 days.
One more league to talk about, the NFL. Playoffs just around the corner, and some big-name players and coaches are currently out on the COVID list. What are teams doing to try and prevent outbreaks, and is it looking like the NFL will be able to finish the season on time?
So, Joe, the NFL is handling this really different compared to the other two leagues. They have self-reported testing. Players and coaches get tests that they take home, and if they have any symptoms, they test themselves, and then they go from there. And they also, once they do test positive, they can test out of that after two negative tests within 24 hours separation. So it's very different than the other leagues and how they're handling it. So the season will probably still go on, and it'll probably still complete look, they had games on Saturday and Sunday that then were moved to Monday and Tuesday in hopes that a lot of these players and coaches, including Nick Sirianni from the Eagles, that game was moved to Tuesday, and Jets coach Robert Saleh, the hopes are that they can test out and coach the game.
All right, Priya, good to have you with us this morning, and have a great holiday. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Coming up, we've seen a lot of 90s trends come back in the past year, but here's one some of us may have forgotten about. Beanie Babies. A new documentary is taking us back in time 20 or so years with what was behind the craze to collect them all and where it all started. One of the film's creators joins me next. You're watching Morning News Now. We're back with some good news for the millions of Americans who are struggling to pay back student loans. The Biden administration has extended the moratorium on federal student loan payments and interest until May 1st. The moratorium began in March 2020 by former President Trump in the early days of the pandemic. It has been extended 3 other times by both administrations. This extension comes as the Omicron variant and inflation introduced new uncertainty into the economy. In a statement, President Biden says, quote, millions of student loan borrowers are still coping with the impacts of the pandemic and need some more time before resuming payments. Time now for our CNBC Money Minute, the biggest financial headlines of the day and why they matter to you. Bertha Coombs is with us this morning. Bertha, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Joe. Let's start off with Apple company closing at least 7 more retail stores since Tuesday, according to a report from Bloomberg, due to a rise in COVID cases among employees. The company usually shuts a store when about 10% of the staff has tested positive. Apple recently reinstated its mask policy for employees and customers. Still, we're seeing those breakthroughs. 9to5 Max says Apple is offering 2-hour free delivery in most metro areas through noon on Christmas Eve to try to ease some of that last-minute shopping crunch. Meantime, Shake Shack wants to help ease your pain at the airport. The burger chain giving away free fries today and tomorrow at New York's JFK Airport to travelers whose flights are delayed or canceled. You just have to show proof of your delay. And if you're flying from another airport, you can still get in on the action. Basically, you just need to take a selfie in front of your gate and tag Shake Shack on Instagram to qualify for a digital voucher. Maker's Mark also wanting to make your holiday travel just a little easier. The bourbon brand will cover fees for checked bags if passengers pack a bottle of its booze. Maker's Mark is going to reimburse travelers 21 and over who pay an extra bag fee up to $40. You just have to upload your receipt to the company's website. Promotion runs through New Year's Eve. So if you're taking a bottle to a friend, you don't have to worry about it. Go ahead and check it and they'll pick up the tab.
There you go. Just remember, you can't drink the Maker's Mark on the plane. You got to wait till you get home. All right, Bertha, thanks so much. Appreciate
exactly,
it.
because they want to charge you for a drink.
All right. So if you're a 90s kid scrolling through TikTok, you might be noticing some of the biggest Y2K trends are making a comeback. From low-rise jeans to the ever-popular cast reunion of Friends, nostalgia has taken hold of millennials and Gen Z alike. But a new documentary is taking a closer look at a craze that might be buried in the back of your mind. Beanie Babies. Listen.
I would have paid whatever it took to get that Beanie Baby at the time. We called every shop over the United States. This was becoming something different.
The HBO Max film titled Beanie Mania goes back in time to examine why these colorful stuffed animals drove kids, and I think some parents, crazy, and what caused all those parents to rush toy stores all over the country. And the director of that documentary joins us now for more on her film. Yema C. Brooks is with us. Good to have you with us this morning. So walk us through this film. Why make a documentary about Beanie Babies, and what was it about these collectibles that made them so popular 20 years ago?
Sure. Hi, nice to be joining you. So the idea for this film really came about when we were kind of deep into lockdown, all that kind of time ago, around 2 years ago, when I think everyone really had an idea that we wanted to look back. I think people kind of like that idea of looking back to a simpler time. And Beanie Babies were really popular kind of from the mid to late 90s. So, of course, that was a completely different time from now. That was pre-9/11. Things felt very different. So we kind of came up with the idea. And as we started looking more and more into it, it seemed like there was more and more of a story there. So it kind of appeared to us like an onion that you keep peeling back. So there was this kind of collective insanity that seemingly the whole country, obviously you can tell from my accent, I'm not from here, but as I kind of looked into it, seemingly the whole country kind of got on board with, which was because of a variety of kind of different factors which really created this lightning in a bottle and this phenomenon that's never really been kind of seen since. So that was the first interesting thing about it. And then the other interesting thing that we found as we kind of kept looking was that actually, yes, Beanie Babies are amazing in their own right and they're a great price point and they're fun. But what really drove the craze was a group of women from a small suburb just outside Chicago, Naperville, who really drove the secondary market. And it was that secondary market that really kind of helped Beanie Babies to thrive.
Now, this story is about much more than just a stuffed toy. It really is about capitalism, extreme capitalism, some would argue, and the lengths people will go for a profitable investment. What can viewers expect to see and hear in this movie? What's the lesson?
Well, I mean, I think there is a lot of fun nostalgia, and it seems to me like everyone seems to say, hey, listen, I've got some Tupperware in my grandma's basement, you know, is it worth something? So this really feels like something which the whole nation was kind of behind. But absolutely, it started as a craze that kids liked and then was ruined by adults. That's something which we state very quickly at the kind of top of the documentary, was very quickly adults ruined it because it became less about the love of a soft toy and more about how can I make money by kind of hoarding and saving these things and selling them for profit.
As adults, sometimes they can ruin everything. All right, MSC Brooks, thanks so much. I'm definitely checking this one out. Excited to see it. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Coming up, an Afghan family that left their lives behind in Kabul, now building a new life in the U.S., and they're getting ready to celebrate the holidays in a new home.
I had left all behind, just some clothes, some important things, and I left it all in Afghanistan.
Up next, we'll hear what it's like adjusting to life in America and the concerns they have for family members still in Afghanistan. For one Afghan refugee family, this holiday season is a bittersweet one. Just months after fleeing the chaos of Kabul, they resettled in Jacksonville with the help of nonprofits contracted by the U.S. government. Now the community is rallying around the family, making sure they have everything they need to transition into their new lives. MSNBC anchor Yasmin Basugian spoke to the family about the change and about what they left behind.
On August 15th, the Taliban overtook Kabul, seizing control of Afghanistan. Afghans desperate to leave their country, fearing prison or worse.
If my visa is not issued, we were really in danger.
Abdul Wasi, an interpreter for the American and Portuguese militaries, left his country with his pregnant wife and 5 children, just 20 days before the Taliban takeover.
You must have had to leave everything behind in Afghanistan.
Yeah, I had left all behind, just some clothes, some important things, and I left it all in Afghanistan.
Our president of the United States is President Joe Biden.
Lutheran Social Services in Jacksonville, Florida, is one of the organizations helping Abdul and other refugee families build a new life. The group helps them with finding housing, enrolling in school, and welcome money, about $1,200 per family member.
Our goal is self-sufficiency by 90 days, which is a very tall goal. If you can imagine being plopped in a new country, not knowing English or really anyone here about the culture.
But Abdul is forging ahead, stocking shelves at a warehouse for $14 an hour. Barely enough money to cover the rent as the welcome money dries up.
They just need the basics for themselves and their families.
And that's where one local school steps in. For 15 years, Riverside Presbyterian Day School has donated toys and necessities to refugee families, giving gifts this year to Afghan refugees, including Abdul and his family, helping students learn important lessons.
To accept everyone. Like, we're all technically the same. There's nothing really different except for our looks and stuff.
Hope that they feel like happy and that they realize it's like people care for them in the new country.
What do you want to do when you grow up?
Doctor.
A doctor.
And they do feel happy in their new home with the opportunity for a fresh start, but not without fear for what they left behind.
All my family members that are back in Afghanistan, I'm worried about that. Some nights, even I could not sleep because of my brothers. What will happen to them? What will be their future?
Thank you, Yasmin, for that report. Now, as of December 20th, some 27,000 Afghans remain on 7 military bases waiting for processing, hoping for a better life and to be reunited with their family here in the U.S. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.